Hello, I am back. Those of you that have been like, where's Shahida at? That's what this live is all about. So I can update you on what's been going on. Hopefully, you can hear me. I've had to move locations, I've had a lot of stuff going on. So I am going to update you on what's been going on. And I'm also going to answer your questions because I know I haven't gone live probably in over a month. So those of you that are in the middle of buying a house or have any questions about buying a house, I am back. Thank you, Sharna and Elle, for joining me. So the topic of today is buying a house over 40. Now I'm going to start with that. However, you can ask me any questions once I open it up for questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Shahida Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. All right, so I'm over 40 myself, right? And when you're over 40, that means your parents are probably over 60 something, right? Or they are maybe in their 70s. And so, what happened to me most recently, and why I had to stop doing videos for a little while, was my father in law moved in with us very suddenly. And he needs help with everything: bathing, dressing, everything, toileting, all of the things you need for daily living. He needs help with all of that. And so we had to hire people very quickly to come in our house to help him with all of that. And we were ill prepared to do so. So he left the hospital and came straight to us. And at that time, we do have a bedroom, thank God. We do have a bedroom on our main level. So that worked out well. But that was also where I had like my YouTube setup. So I had to move all of my things. That's why my background and everything probably looks a little bit different. So I had to move everything upstairs and just, make more space for this. Also we had to make more space for him, make sure he had his wheelchairs, his medical bed, prescriptions, everything. And it took a while to get him acclimated to our house, right? So I had to just take a pause from the channel. Of course, I also have two kids in middle school. So that was, on that as well. It's the end of the school year. So I took a break from the channel. But I feel like this could definitely be a learning experience for everyone, because oftentimes when I would show houses to my clients that were in their 40s or so, I was like, hey, I would just ask, just out of habit or concern. I said, well, how is your parents' health? Do you anticipate any of them having to move in with you in the near future? And sometimes they would say, no, I don't anticipate it. Every once in a while, they said they might have to move in with us. And I think a lot of people don't think about it as to who's going to care for your parents. Are they going to go to a nursing home? Do they have long-term care insurance? Like, what is that going to look like? And do you need to make sure, if you are buying a house, that you can provide the space for them if necessary? I have other clients. So that's my number one. I have three things I want to say before I open it up for questions. And everything's on my left side now. So these are my three things that I want to make sure all of my viewers, including myself, over 40, are thinking about. Number one is, when you're looking at property, especially if you're married, then you have probably four people to think about. But if you are single, you may only have two people to think about: your parents, your mom, your dad. How is their health? What is the chance that they may have to leave their current living condition and move in with you? This should be a consideration, I think, for everyone over 40. Maybe it's not going to be something that you'll have to deal with, but if there's a possibility, you want to buy thinking about that up front. So that's one thing I want to say. Number two, multi-generational living. I have clients now that I just sold their house. They bought it about 3 years ago, and now they're in the situation where they're going to be moving both of their parents in with them. So they need a larger house. So, it's something that they had kind of thought about ahead of time, but the house that they bought wasn't large enough for them to move in, and they have children. So they sold their house. They had to get rid of their 3% interest rate. And they did make money from the sale, which is good. But now they have to find a house that's going to take both families. So you're looking for multi-generational, a separate living space, a separate kitchen area, and that's going to be a more expensive home. So, and they're not always the easiest to find. So sometimes you have to jump on one that's going to work out. But basically, they're looking for a ranch home on a basement, but that basement needs to have a separate entrance. It needs to be flat. It needs to have a kitchen area, or they could add a kitchen area to it. So they're looking for something very specific. So in this multi-generational living, if that's a possibility, either for you to buy up front or something that you and your parents, grandparents can do together, especially with affordability being an issue, then you should be looking at that and kind of thinking about that as an option, okay, for you. And then lastly is healthcare costs. So this stuff is not cheap, right? So we are, a lot of people are in between. You don't qualify for Medicaid, right? I mean, you have to make no money to qualify for Medicaid a lot of times. And then you don't, and you have Medicare, right? But you don't qualify for a lot of things. So the home health aides that we have coming in, we're paying for. And again, he needs them pretty much all day because I still work at home. So they're here while I'm here. And that's expensive. He does have a house. We haven't sold that yet. But it's probably going to be um, a time we have to get to the point where he's going to have to sell his house. And so having those conversations ahead of time. Now, this is my father-in-law, so I don't have the final say because they have, my husband has, siblings and that sort of thing. But these conversations before it becomes an emergency, and I am going to get to your questions, before it becomes an emergency, have those conversations ahead of time. Is one thing. I know I've done several videos about having a will, having a trust, having all of those things, but you also need to have a plan in place as your parents get older. Who are they going to live with? Are they going to go to a nursing home? How are they going to pay for the nursing home? How are they going to pay if they stay at the home? So a lot of things need to be discussed ahead of time. As we're reaching this age where it's like the sandwich generation. You have kids, and then you have that you're caring for your parents as well. So I just wanted to say that in this video. I don't know if anybody can relate to me, like having to take care of, your parents or grandparents, but that's why I've been gone. This will be my official video coming back to the channel, making new content, going live more often. So thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for checking on me. Thank you for leaving me comments. I really appreciate it. But now I'm going to open it up to your questions. Hey. All right, so let's see who was here first. Sharna was here first. Hey, Sharna. And then Elle. Hey, you guys. I'm so happy. We have 80 people on. I'm happy to be back. I'm excited about it. So Elle did a super chat, so I'm going to take hers first. So let me get back. I'm a little rusty, you guys. So thank you, Elle, for the super chat. The question is, a new tax assessment raised tax by $400 annually. Should I add an additional $36 to the escrow or principal? Stay encouraged. So thank you so much, Elle. I would. So for everyone that escrows their taxes and insurance, meaning you pay a little bit extra with your principal and interest. You pay the estimated taxes and the estimated insurance with your mortgage payment. So for those of you that are doing that, then when the bill is due, the mortgage company is going to pay your taxes. They're going to pay for your insurance out of your escrow account. However, there might be a shortage. So in this example, say they estimated $2,000 and then it's actually $2,400. They're going to go ahead and pay the $2,400, and then they're going to readjust your escrows, and they're going to give you an option to pay the difference, right? They're going to make you pay them back the $400 that they put up because they underestimated. And they're also going to change your mortgage payment to make sure they get that additional $400 from now on. So they'll give you an option to just pay the difference, to pay the shortage and leave your mortgage payment the way it is, or you can just take the higher mortgage payment. And they're going to add in not just the first $400, the increase, the $400, they're also going to put in the $400 that you owe them. So it'll be basically $800. Now, in this instance, I wouldn't automatically do it. I would just, make a note of it and save the money on my own, because that every year your escrow account is going to be looked at, and it's going to be balanced to make sure that you have enough money. And the same way, if you have, not enough money, if you have too much money, they'll issue a refund check. If they are collecting by law, they can't collect more. They can collect a little bit more than what they need, estimating that things may go a little bit higher, but they can't collect, I forget the percentage, but there is a percentage that they can't go over. They can't have too much money in that escrow account because, again, you're not getting any interest from this escrow account. You're not getting anything. So it's really important that that you manage it, but they're going to send you a letter. I just wouldn't pay up front. I would wait for them to assess what the actual payment is, what they're going to pay. And then when that letter comes out telling you to pay that amount, then I would go ahead and do that. But go ahead and put the money aside. And I would just say that because, as much as whatever you can control it. So you can control your money right now, even though it's not a lot of money. You could put it in your savings account. It could be making interest. And then you could, rebalance that escrow account after. Thank you, Elle. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. All right. Curtis says, hold on, let me see. Am I having connectivity issues? I don't know. Hopefully you guys can hear me. You're putting in questions, so I think you can. I just cannot tell as I'm doing it. I don't know if there's a connectivity issue or maybe I'm a little bit delayed. Just let me know. All right. So I'm going to go back. Thank you, Elle, for the super chat. You guys, hit like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Curtis, hey, Curtis is my birthday twin. Our birthdays are both August 31st. Hey, Miss Hill, what's the best thing about getting a present into a new home? I don't understand what you mean. What is the best thing about getting a present into a new home? I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Curtis, by that question. So reword it for me. I said I'm a little bit rusty, but reword it for me so I know what you're talking about, please. All right. So everybody, thank you for joining me. I'm going to get rid of this banner. We kind of talked about, some of us over 40, what we need to start thinking about. All right. So let's go, you guys. Let me see. All right. Thank you, Life with Karsha. Thank you so much. Yeah, this hair is growing out. I'm about to cut it back to my bob. It's easier to take care of. I appreciate it. All right. Tay says, such a good point, especially the bedroom on the main level, what they seem to exclude in most townhomes and 2-level homes. Yeah. So it's just, one of the things, I don't think we really thought about it moving in here, but I always had it in the back of my mind, if one of our parents needed to move in, then we would have that option. Okay, let's see. It says, hey, Kat, I just wanted to say it's hard out there and there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm sorry also to say there's no amount of money that can save us from okay. Let's just pray about it. I'm trying to go through all the questions in order, you guys. All right. So Sharna says, when is a good time to contact a lender to request removal of PMI? Will the lender automatically notify the homeowner? This is a great question. So first of all, PMI is private mortgage insurance. So number one, PMI is only for conventional loans. So conventional loans have PMI. All government loans, except for VA, have just mortgage insurance. So that private mortgage insurance, is specific to conventional, and they will not notify you. So they're only, when you close on your house, they're going to give you a big amortization table, and it'll tell you when you reach the 20% from making payments on that conventional loan. They're going to say, when you reach this 20%, the PMI will stop. You'll stop being charged the PMI. But they don't talk about if your home increases in value. And a lot of you are living in neighborhoods or have been in neighborhoods where your homes have increased in value because of the pandemic and everything that's going on with housing. So you have to notify them if you feel probably a combination of your home going up in value and you making payments that you think you're at 20%. Okay. And that means they're going to have to send out an appraiser to appraise where you are. So let me give you 2 examples. One, my first house, I was able to get rid of the PMI after 3 years. I called them, and it wasn't that I made enough payments to pay it down. I put 7% down on my first house. It was conventional loan, 7% down. And it wasn't that I paid it down 20% or another additional 13% in 3 years. I didn't. It was a combination of me paying it and a combination of the home going up in value, just, appreciation year after year. And so that combination, I was like, I think I'm at, I would see my first house was a new construction subdivision. So I would see what the builder started charging for my floor plan. And I said, hey, I think my house is now worth where I have the 20%. So I called my mortgage company and I said, hey, I want to get rid of my PMI. They tell you, okay, we will send an appraiser out. You have to pay. You have to pay for the appraisal. So you pay for the appraisal. They send the appraiser out. If the appraiser appraises it and, they go between the appraisal price and the loan balance, if you have the 20% by your next payment, the mortgage insurance is done. The private mortgage insurance is off. Now, I had another client. They do make you, for most lenders, they will make you wait 2 years. They'll make you own the house for 2 years. I had another client that bought during the pandemic. They bought right in 2020, and they were able to get rid of it by 2022 because home values were going up so quickly. But you definitely have to call them. With most lenders, you will have to pay for your appraisal. So you just want to make sure you have it, like based on like home sales in your neighborhood, what everything's looking like, how much you owe on the house. Do your little math to see if you have 20% equity in the home, and then you can get rid of it. But they definitely will not call you. You definitely have to reach out to them, call them, and I have a video on this of how to get rid of your PMI. So, and again, this is conventional loans. If you have FHA or USDA, it doesn't work like that. You will have mortgage insurance for the life of your loan. So, and a lot of people would, have FHA and then they would refinance to conventional to get rid of the PMI, but that doesn't make sense right now either, because if you had an FHA loan in the last 5 years or so, you're sitting on a really low interest rate, most of us. So it's not going to make sense to refi just to get rid of your mortgage insurance. So stay where you are, pay the mortgage insurance, FHA people, and only if it makes sense will you refinance out of an FHA loan. All right, good question, Sharna. Clark says, how can I speak with you directly? There's really no way to speak with me directly, unless you're like a client of mine. I only take a small area of clients in Georgia. I'm in Georgia. So if you have questions, and a lot of you just have general questions, so you can ask it here tonight, or have a Facebook group, because some people want to ask anonymously. If you ask me anonymously in the Facebook group, I'll answer there. But that's pretty much the only two ways. I also have a master class. So if you buy that master class, some of those questions will be answered in that master class too. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the welcome backs. All right, Greenpeace. Hey, Shahida, I thought I would be caring full time for a relative as well, but that changed. However, there's so much chaos involved. My question is, how do I access a small amount of equity? So, equity, and I have a video about 4 ways to access equity in your home. So, I'll go over those 4, but watch that video too. So equity is the difference between what you owe on a house and what your house is worth. So if your house is worth 100,000, make it very easy. If your house is worth 100,000 and you owe 60,000, then your equity is 40,000. Okay. So the difference between what you owe on the house and what the house is worth is your equity. So the major ways you would access that equity, if you wanted to access that 40,000, the first one is to sell it. Right? You sell it, you get that equity out. If you're able to sell it for what it's worth, if you sell it for what it's worth, then you get that equity out. The other ways are to take a home equity loan out. So you can take out a home equity loan, and a home equity loan, so say you take a $20,000 home equity loan, then you would have set payments over a certain amount of time. You're not refinancing your property. You would just, take out that 20,000. They would say, hey, you owe, $400 a month until you pay it off, right? So that'll be a home equity loan. A home equity line of credit is not a set amount. So say you want a $10,000 home equity line of credit because you don't know if you necessarily need the money or not. You just want to have it available for expenses and that sort of thing. It's kind of like a credit card, but you're taking that credit card on your house. So you could use that money to say that of the 10,000, you use 2,000 of it. Then you start paying on that 2,000. You don't have to pay anything on that 8,000. But once you pay the 2,000, it goes back to 10,000 of available credit that you can use. That's a home equity line of credit. Both of those will have interest rates, right? And the interest rate will be higher than your home interest rate. But in both of those instances, your mortgage payment doesn't change, but you do start making payments on that home equity line of credit once you use it. And you will start making payments on the home equity loan. As soon as you take out the home equity loan, you start making payments. And the last thing is another way is a cash out refinance, meaning that you might go back to an $80,000 mortgage and take out $20,000, but then you're changing your entire mortgage payment to start paying back that $80,000. And that's the fourth way to access your equity. I wouldn't recommend the cash out refinance for most people because now your entire $80,000 mortgage is at a higher interest rate, whatever the market rate is now. And if you have a low interest rate, then it's not going to make sense. So those are really your four options to access your home's equity. Probably the easiest thing, if it's not for you, say you only need a small amount, it might be the home equity line of credit that might be easiest for you. All right. But watch that video. I'll kind of explain it in a little bit more detail. Good question, Greenpeace. All right. So Curtis clarified. He said, I meant to say a person into a new home. Now I got to see the whole question, Curtis. Let me go back to it. It says, hey, Miss Hill, what's the best about getting a person into a new home? Instead of a present. Okay. I guess, are you speaking as a real estate agent? I'm gonna say that you are. So the best part about it to me is usually when people didn't think it was possible for them and they realize that, a lot of times that they should have done this a long time ago. And it's just a different way of living, especially if they have children or they've been in apartments all their lives. They never had any land. They've never been able to do certain things in their home. And it's just a beautiful thing. Like I never lived in a house until I was 14. And the first thing I never had my own room. I shared a room with my sister the whole time. And my mom bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, basically a ranch on a basement. And it was the first time I ever got my own room. And, it was just a big deal. And, to see my mom do that. So I think that's the best thing about getting a person into a new home is that the experience, especially if they've never experienced it before, is usually a really big deal. And people that are buying like their second and third home, it's not as exciting of a process. It's just like a business transaction typically. But those people that are first time home buyers, getting in there for the first time, changing, because not only them, their families see, oh, I was able to buy a house, then they feel like they're able to buy a house. So it really does change them, especially if they have children, their children see the process. So it's really a good thing to see. And I remember for myself. And so I love to see it with first time home buyers too. All right, I think I answered your question, Curtis. I'm not still 100% sure. All right, let me get rid of that comment. Thank you for the question, though. Thank you, guys. Austin Vasquez, buying a house at your 40s, is it bad? Are you giving sorry. I gave some advice, just personal advice for things that I'm going through because I had to move my father-in-law into our house. But in general, and I have several videos about buying a house in retirement, buying a house over 40, over 50, over 60. I say that you need to go for it for sure. And this is the reason, because as you get older, you really need to stabilize your expenses. And being able to stabilize your expenses with a home is better than having to go from apartment to apartment to apartment and having to move just to get a lower, rent payment or, that sort of thing. Buying a house not only allows you to build equity, and that equity you're going to need. You should never really go through life unless you're in a very expensive location, right? You're in a very expensive location and your income is not going to allow you to buy a house. I'm thinking why you're going to live there long term anyway. But for the most part, if you're able to buy a house, the earlier the better. But even if you feel like it's a little bit late for yourself, then it still would make sense because number one, you're stabilizing your expenses, and that's one of your largest expenses. And number two, you're able to build equity that you're going to need later in life because as you're in your 60s, your 70s, you don't want to have a rent payment. And you should, if you should be toward the end of your mortgage payment at that point. But as you get older, you need to minimize your expenses, eliminate your expenses because you're not really in your money making years, right? So having a house or having a stable payment or having an almost paid for house, if not a paid for house, is really a benefit to you to be able to stay here because we're talking about healthcare, your healthcare costs are higher. A lot of things are happening where if you have at least I know I'm going to live here. I know what my payment's going to be. It's not going to increase drastically. A lot of towns have special tax advantages for seniors as you get older where you're not paying taxes or your taxes are frozen, that sort of thing. So yes, I'm a big proponent of buying a house as soon as you are ready to do so, but it's never too late to buy a house either. All right, good question, Mr. Vasquez. All right, Stella, bought first home in 23, looking to buy with mom. She's on Social Security for multi-generational living. So you just bought a house 2 years ago. Combined income 83,000, 2,000 a month in debt including mortgage, chances of approval. Considering renting my home to qualify, tips. So definitely you probably can't. I don't know where you live, so I don't know if 83,000 is a good amount of income for where you live or if it's, average, that sort of thing. But you definitely can do it. This would be my advice. So I probably wouldn't get rid of the house you bought in 2023 if you can. If you feel like you can make income by renting it out, then I might keep it. If you feel like you're just going to be breaking even and you'll be able to make money on the sale, it might be beneficial for you to sell it. But look at it, both ways to see which one makes the most sense. But get pre-approved together. Check on remember I was talking about there's advantages for seniors. So a lot of times seniors don't have to pay the school tax in a lot of areas. There'll be like a senior homestead exemption. So that can actually significantly decrease your monthly payment on the house as far as your taxes and insurance. You'll pretty much just have mostly principal interest. You'll have your insurance, but you won't have a heavy tax bill. So make sure you're moving into an area where they do have a senior exemption on taxes because then your payment will be lower. Also, look into things like if your parent doesn't have life insurance, look in for like mortgage life insurance to see like, okay, if something was to happen to my parent, would my mortgage get paid off? As an option because I've been talking to other people about that as well to say, okay, is that something that I can get? And sometimes you can get that if you can't get life insurance, but the premium might not be worth it. So you want to just look into that and just make sure you're buying something that if life happens how life is supposed to happen, your parents will pass before you. And if you are dependent on her income, even if it's just a social security income, then that home may be a burden to you in the future. So don't overbuy. You want to be comfortable that you can afford it on your own if your mom wasn't here, and then look into that mortgage insurance. I'm not the mortgage insurance that you pay with the mortgage, but if something happens, they pay off your mortgage. If sometimes people are either too ill or they're too old to get significant term policies, or it's very expensive or not worth it. So I would look into all of those things to buy. All right. Hope that was helpful, Stella. All right, Sarah. Hey, and thank you everybody that's on the live with me. I'm back and I'm happy to be back. I talked a bit about where I was at the very beginning of this, so you may have to watch the replay. But thank you for joining me. I'm answering your questions as they come in. I don't know what time it is. Time is going. It's about 7:30. So I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. But thank you for joining me. Hit the like, subscribe button if this is your first time here. All right, I'm looking to invest in investment property. Should I wait until after August to see if I can get better rates? I would hate to overpay in this environment. So we're in a kind of a volatile time, right? We have the tariffs, we have people not knowing if they're going to have their jobs. But I would say that as far as buying, it's actually a good time because some people have backed away, then sellers homes are staying on the market longer. So you can find a deal right now. You can in a lot of areas, you can bid less. You can get all your closing costs paid. You probably get enough closing costs to buy down your rate a little bit. So this could be an opportunity for you to buy, but you just want to make sure, what are you buying for? It's not necessarily that you're going to overpay, but most investors, they're either buying to buy and hold, and they know that this property is going to be worth more in the future and they're going to buy and hold. Some of them are looking for cash flow. So they have to make sure with the mortgage that they're going to be able to rent it out for significantly more. That's going to cover the maintenance. It's going to cover taxes, insurance, everything, right? So I would still be in the market because there are some deals to be had. Every market is going to have deals if you're ready. So figure out what your goals are for the property. Are you flipping? Are you renting? Are you buying and holding? Whatever it is. And then work with an agent that specializes in investors. So then if something comes up, you may not have to be going out every day looking, but you talk to that agent and say, hey, if you have something that comes up or there's something that you find that's really a good deal, then I'm interested in it. So it doesn't have to be like you're hardcore looking, but you can also, just put some feelers out there. So if they do find a home that comes up, then they'll reach out to you about it. But get your ducks in a row and know exactly what your goals are, because you can find deals. There's nothing special that's going to happen in August that hasn't already happened. Like rates aren't going down. If rates go down, it's because we're in a recession more than likely. And that may or may not be a time to buy. So as an investor, always be open to opportunities. So be prepared. Be prepared with your down payment. Be prepared with your agent. Be prepared to jump on any opportunities that may come up in the market. All right, good question. Thank you, guys. All right. Curtis says, no, you answered it perfectly. I felt very happy once I bought my house last October. The feeling was priceless. Plus, I like to motivate my family to buy a house as well. Yeah, for those of you that are first-time home buyers, you know the feeling like, you're leaving your house and you're like, I have a house now. Like there's something that comes over you. And it's like, and I think it's the stability part. You don't have to keep on moving part, and that you're going to be settled. Like that's a peace that comes over you in a lot of ways when you're like finally settled in a house that you own. All right. Thank you, guys. Oh, Elle posted my video about a video about how to get equity out of your house. So thank you so much. All right, Ty. How to buy another house to be your primary residence in another state if you haven't sold or rented out your current house yet. So I did a video about this. I need to change the name of this video. I don't know what the name of it is, but I talked about how to buy a house in another state, that sort of thing. So I do have a video, but this is what I want. This is why this doesn't work. Okay. So let me give you an example. You're in Texas and you want to move to New Jersey. And so you're going to get a loan if you're going to get a mortgage, right? So you're going to get a mortgage. You're going to talk to that lender and say, hey, I'm going to move to New Jersey and I want to get a primary residence, meaning I'm going to live in the house in New Jersey. You have to prove to that lender, because the reason why you want to prove it to them is because the down payment is going to be lower. If you can prove to them it's going to be your primary residence, that you're going to live there. Also, the interest rate is going to be lower if you can prove it to them that you're going to live there. So you're working in Texas, you're living in Texas. How do you prove to a lender that you're going to be living in New Jersey? Typically by your employment. It doesn't matter that you have a house necessarily in Texas, because you can tell them, hey, I'm going to rent out this house because I'm moving to New Jersey. What they're going to want to see, most lenders, they're going to want to see employment in Texas. Like, I'm moving to Texas because I work in Texas. Unless you are retired. If you're retired or if you're a remote worker, you can live anywhere, and make sure your employer is going to back you up on your remote work status. A lot of you think you're remote workers, but they really won't allow you, or they don't want you to live out of state. So you have to be a true remote worker, and they're going to verify it with your HR, your personnel, to just, to verify that you can live anywhere, and you're not subject to live in the same state as your employment. So that's the first thing that they're going to do. So even if, say, you're going to do a job transfer, they will take your job transfer paperwork, but more than likely, they're going to want you to have at least one check at the New Jersey location proving that you actually moved and you started employment in that new state. So that's pretty much how you would prove that what area is your primary residence. It's going to be primarily through your employment. So I hope that answered your question. I do have that video that kind of explains it a little bit more, but yeah, they're going to decide whether or not, and the difference of interest rate is huge. So say you're doing an FHA loan, 3.5% down. If they think it's a second residence, or if they think it's a investment property because you're not going to live there, then that down payment is probably going to be 15 to 20%. So it is a huge difference. And that interest rate might be at least 0.5%, sometimes a full percent more than if it was your primary residence. Okay. So good question, Ty. All right. Trent says, is it possible to buy a home on a fixed income in your 50s? Definitely. And I'm saying definitely because lenders like fixed incomes, because you're not like other people where you might lose your job and it might go into foreclosure, right? But if you have a fixed income, you're on Social Security, you have a pension, you're on something that's coming to you every month, then they almost like that better because they know exactly what you're going to make, and they know that it doesn't stop. You're going to make it, for a lot of people, for the rest of your lives. You'll at least make that. Your only concern is, how much is this fixed income? Usually Social Security is not a lot, right? Depending on where you retired, your pension may not be a lot. But if you have a pension and you have Social Security, you can qualify because your income is almost guaranteed that you're going to have it. So you can qualify. If you live in an affordable area, then that's probably going to be enough. If you live in a very expensive area, then it might not be enough. But if you're in a situation where you're either retired, or you have flexibility, move to a less expensive area. But it's not an issue having a fixed income. But that fixed income, say your fixed income is $2,500 a month, then there's not a lot of things that, like, your affordability is going to have a ceiling, right, as to what you can afford. So you just have to be mindful of that. Most lenders, if you have excellent credit, most lenders are not going to allow you to go over 50% of your, sometimes with Social Security, they'll allow you to go a little bit higher, as far as, like, they'll overestimate your income. But let me do an easy example. You're making $3,000 a month. Most lenders are not going to let you go over $1,500 total. That's taxes, insurance, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And so that's going to be your budget. And you may not want to have half of your income go into your payment. So you may want to try to go down to like $1,200, $1,100, $1,000. Be really conservative, because that's all the money you have coming in. All right. Thank you. But you definitely can qualify. All right, Sharna. What are the pros and cons on purchasing a home with interest-only payments? So the pros, right, it's going to be cheap because you're not paying the principal, so it's going to be less expensive every month. However, the major con is your payments are going to change. You're never going to have fixed. It might be fixed for a year, but you're not going to have fixed over 30 years or fixed over 15 years for interest only payments. So the cons are that payment is going to change. I think there was a video where a lady was like, her payment went up like crazy. Her payment was like $1,000, went up to like $5,000, something crazy. I forget what exactly it was, but a lot of times because they were paying, they had an adjustable rate mortgage or interest only mortgage to get into a house that they really couldn't afford. And then, year after year, that payment is going to change because you're going to start eventually paying the interest or eventually eventually paying the principal, maybe even having a higher interest rate later. So that's the benefit of it. Also, because you're not paying into that principal, then you're not paying down the mortgage. So when it's time to sell or anything like that, you don't have any equity in the house. So I'll be very, very cautious. Interest only loans were very popular during the great financial crisis because people were buying I can afford this $700,000 house and my payments are cheap. But then after 2 years, those payments went back to what they were supposed to be and you couldn't afford it at all. And a lot of people foreclosed because they weren't expecting it, or the lender said, oh, you could just refinance it later. And we know how that is. You can't refinance, right? So people that were told, let's talk about the people that were at 6%, 7%, and were told, hey, you'll be able to finance in about a year, 2 years. We're like at the 2 years. It's 2025. And you can't refinance because the interest rates aren't significantly lower than where you are. There were basically still at 7%, high sixes. So, it doesn't make any sense for most of us to refinance, especially not us with 3%, but it also doesn't make sense for you to refinance if you are at a 6.5% or 7%. It's not enough savings for you to refinance. So thank you, Sharna, for that question, but be very cautious on interest only. A lot of people lost their homes with interest only loans because they bought more house because they're like, oh, this payment is cheap, I can afford it. But then, once the payment changed, they couldn't afford it at all. And again, in their minds, or they were told, you'll be able to refinance to a more affordable payment. And that wasn't an option because they didn't have equity or they couldn't qualify anymore, or whatever it was, they couldn't refinance. All right, Gwen. Hey, Gwen, I took out a home equity line of credit for $75,000, which was good for 10 years. I never touched it until my paid off house had water damage in 2019. Thank goodness I had it available. So I was talking about, another person asked the ways you can access your equity. So this is a good example. She's saying she took out a home equity line of credit. Remember, it's almost like a credit card. You don't have to charge anything. You never have to use it. But once you start using it, you have to start making payments on it. So she's saying, I never touched it for years and years and years until she actually needed to use it for something. And typically where, some of our credit cards, they might be at, high double digits, then your home equity line of credit might be at 7% or 8%, maybe 7 to 10%, depending. I don't know what the rates are now, but it's significantly lower than putting it on your credit card. That's why you would do something like this. Okay. Just make sure you have enough to pay it, because a home equity loan and a home equity line of credit, your house is always collateral for those loans. So if you're ever unable to make those payments, they can come get your house. So you always just want to be cautious with that, but it's going to be more affordable than you putting it on your credit card. All right, good question. All right, Elle's working today. Thank you, Elle. How to buy a house in another state, that's on it there. Good. All right, good job. Gwen is telling you guys a lot in these comments too. I appreciate it, Gwen. CC 718, is a condo a good starter property for a single woman, no children, or a single family house? I'm on the single family house, CC, and this is why. I know that condos and townhomes seem, and a lot of times they are more affordable. Sometimes it really depends. They have some expensive condos and some expensive townhomes. But one thing about condos and townhomes are the fees, the association fees, the condo fees, the fees. And you'll find that, condos even more than townhomes, because townhomes, you own the land that your townhome, typically you own the land that your townhome is sitting on, and you're responsible for that kind of stuff. But with condos, you're sharing so much. If there's an elevator, if there are, you're sharing a lot of walls, you're sharing the steps, you're sharing all this maintenance because you're so close together. There's so many common areas. And oftentimes those monthly assessments for condos or those dues will increase, right, over time. And it's just less stable, in my opinion, than if you buy a single family home. So if you buy a single family home, there's no, those fees aren't attached because everything that, your plot of land, you're responsible for. I don't have to worry about the elevator going out, or maybe, I don't know, the roof on the condominium needing a new one, so we all have to chip in. I've seen some assessments that every condo owner was supposed to pay like $8,000 in order to make the necessary maintenance and repairs. So I really want you to be cautious if you do decide on a condo. It's because that is so significantly less expensive than a single family home that it makes sense for you. And also, I've seen condos that have been, 200,000, and the monthly, HOA, the monthly assessment, the condo fee is like $800 a month. So you want to make sure that you think about both of those things in the purchase of that. Because if it was like apples and apples, whether you can get a $300,000 condo plus the fees versus buying a $300,000 house, then I feel that it's going to be less on you, because now you know what you're responsible for, versus there's going to be other things that you have no control over that you may be responsible for. Like, I control my HVAC, I can control my roof. Not, I know what's happening with those things. I just want you to be really cautious about some of the fees or assessments that come in with condos. So I'm not against it. I think you have more control if you buy a single family home. But a lot of people don't want the maintenance. They don't want the other things. And they just don't want to deal with it. So research it. I have a video about like condo beware, and I talk about some things before you buy a condo that you should make sure you have. You want the minutes from the association meetings, because a lot of times in those meetings, they're going back and forth about things that need to be paid for, or if they're going to have a special assessment to charge people more money per month. So, make sure you look at that video and think about some of those things. But I think I like to have more control. That's why I'm more leaning toward the single family. Even when you're single, even if you're young and no children, because say your monthly assessment is $500, you can pay somebody to do your lawn. You could pay for somebody to do your maintenance with that same $500 in your single family home. All right. So it has to be a big difference in price for me to say that it made sense. All right. Good question, CC. All right. Teresa says, I'm buying my second home now, way over 40. Never thought I'd be doing it, but it's a good move for me. I'm moving near family. I'm buying new constructions. Congratulations. You never know. Like, you never know when you have to move. Like I said, if anybody else in my family gets gets sick or has to move in with us, then we probably will have to move. And I didn't plan on moving until my kids were out of high school. So you do never know. Like, there's something, life happens. And so it might be a time when you may have to move. I'm not selling. One thing I know I'm not going to do, though, because I bought my house in 2016, I'm not going to sell this house. Like, this will be like an investment property. I'll leave this house for my kids, because they're not going to build this anymore like this for this price. So I probably will still hold on to this house long term. All right. Parlor says, I'm under contract on an affordable place. Congratulations, Parlor. I love that. Love that. Love that. All right. Dole says, hey, hi. What do you think of kit homes or tiny homes? Bad or good investment? I think tiny homes could be a good investment. I like a tiny home in the back of a single family home as a better investment, because a lot of times the land, if you're trying to buy a tiny home and put it on your own land, you got to buy the land, you got to get utilities to it. And a lot of that stuff will add up and be more expensive than you probably think. And then you have to, worry about the stability of that house, how strong it is, all that kind of stuff. So I like the idea of you buying an affordable, and people are doing it in cities that allow, tiny homes or ADUs on the land. So you have to check your city ordinances. So if you buy a house, then put one of those in your backyard, you can use it. Another family member can move in. Some people move into the tiny house and rent out the big house. Some people, so that could be your extra income that's in the back of a house that is more permanent, is larger. So that becomes a a better selling point for a lot of people because now you have 2 properties on your residence. It really depends. I know in California they're very big because land is so scarce there. Um, but overall, I don't know. I like buying properties that are going to, as far as resale, make sense for a lot of people. So where a lot of people want that. Everybody doesn't want to live in a tiny home. So I think if you're looking for resale value and that sort of thing, then it may decrease. So I really like the fact that, if you have a modest home that has some land and you put a tiny home or a kit home on that land, but I'm not sure if it makes good financial sense for you to buy land, then put the house on it. But if you already have a property or your family member already has property, like your parents, right? Put an ADU on their house. You're going to run that electricity. So you already have a house that has all the utilities and everything there. So it's less expensive to get it up and running. All right, good question. All right, hey, John Smith, I'm coming down. NACA versus FHA, which is better? Also for down payment assistance, does a realtor or mortgage lender apply for it or the actual person looking for the home? All right, good questions. So NACA and FHA are not the same. Like they're not apples to apples, right? NACA is a program. NACA is a program that you have to go through. You have to have counseling, all of that. And then you get a conventional loan. And that conventional loan is no down payment, no closing costs. But it's a program. It's not a mortgage product. At the end of your NACA experience, what you're getting, your mortgage is going to be a conventional loan from Bank of America. So that's what you're getting. And FHA, there's no program attached to it. Like NACA is a program. So FHA is just a 3.5% down payment. There's not as many restrictions. You don't have to go through counseling. You don't have to go through a budget. There's a lot of rules with NACA. So as far as NACA is a good program and it's going to be more affordable. Say you were buying a house with NACA and you're buying the same house with an FHA loan, then buying it through NACA is going to be less expensive because you're not going to have mortgage insurance. You're not going to have a down payment. So that's going to be less expensive. But I don't know what the percentage is. I'm going to make this up, but say only 30% actually go through with a NACA because there's so much that goes on that stops people from making it through the NACA process, right? Where FHA, you probably have a much higher rate of, getting the loan, getting approved and closing. So you have to look, what I tell people is get pre-approved, right? And then see if NACA will work for you. And if you feel like NACA, because a lot of people said, I tried NACA, I couldn't do it. I left after 6 months. And you want to be able to say, I still want a house. I'm going to do FHA or I'm going to do conventional on my own. Conventional has Home Ready and Home Possible, which is a 3% down mortgage product. So you do have a lot of options, but NACA, if you can go through the process, if you're willing to do everything they tell you to do, then it would be less expensive for you to go through NACA. What was the other question? For the down payment assistance, so there's a couple of different ways, and I have some videos on this as well. So the primary answer is that you apply for you apply for down payment assistance for programs that don't require for you to use a preferred lender. So some down payment assistance programs will tell you only can use these lenders. So if there are lender restrictions, then you have to go through that lender. And so you'll go to that lender and they'll apply for the down payment assistance program for you. But other programs may not require you to use a specific lender. You may have to apply directly with that program. So it's going to depend. The realtor is never going to apply so take the realtor out. The realtor is never going to apply for down payment assistance for you. It's either going to be yourself going directly to the program and applying, or it's going to be going to a lender that's an approved lender for that program. So I always tell people, you go ahead and you research the programs that are available to you, the down payment assistance programs that are available, and then you'll know whether you have to go directly to them or if you have to go through a lender. And, then you'll do it, right? Once you pick which program you want to use, but never go straight to a lender and say, do you have any down payment assistance programs? They're like, no. And then what are you going to do? So do your research ahead of time and find out, what programs are available, and then find out if you have to go through a lender or go directly to the program. Good question. All right. We're at close to 8 o'clock. I'm going to take 5 more questions. I will have new content coming out. Get my masterclass if you don't have it already. I'm back. So I'm happy, and I'm happy to be back. I miss talking to all you guys. There's a new option. So I'm going to see if that will work. So comments, they say, will come up on the screen. Let me see if it'll work for me. All right, let's see. All right, Rose says, I have a lump sum of cash. Would you advise I recast my mortgage or use the funds for an investment property? All right, so a recast, pretty much, for those of you who don't know what a recast is when you have a lump sum of money. So say that you owe 100,000, you have 30,000, you could put $30,000 on your mortgage and then ask the lender to recast it for you. So really like redo your payments, so you can get a lower mortgage payment because now they're doing it off of that 70,000, basically. All right, so that's an option. Or she's saying, I don't know what numbers we're dealing with, or we take that 30,000 and we buy an investment property. I like that. I don't like getting rid of a lot of money all at once and not having a specific return, because basically you are recasting to get a lower mortgage payment. Or can you invest and have, if you're comfortable with your mortgage payment, then I don't know whether or not you should have to recast, right? To me, it might make more sense if you're buying smart on the investment side to buy something that's going to make you money or grow your 30,000 more, because, but I would look at it in both ways. I would really do the numbers and say, if I do this, I'm going to save, $300 a month. If I do this, I have the potential of making $300 a month because I'm going to rent it out and I'm going to gain the equity over time. So I'm going to look at all of the scenarios to see which one makes more sense. And I probably would think that the recast may not make a lot of sense. So yeah, but look at it both ways and see if it makes sense for you to recast that mortgage. All right. But if you can't afford the mortgage or you feel like the mortgage is really tight, it may make sense for you. All right. That's question 1 of the 5. All right, Celeste. Hello. I live in Alabama and I'm a homeowner for a year now. Thanks for the info I got from watching your show. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Celeste. That is great, great, great. And you made it through a whole year. So I know it feels good. Good job. Good job. All right. Let's see. Gwen said they can't garnish a pension or social security check, and that is very true. So that's why when I was saying when you're on a fixed income, they like it. There's no issue with it. All right, let's see. Alexander, how you doing? Great videos, thank you. For someone with significant savings, what percentage of mortgage or house value should they pay, and at what stage of the house buying process? In all of my videos, I usually say still 25 to 35% of your take-home pay is ideal, right? What Dave Ramsey says, 25% of your take-home pay with the 15-year mortgage. I'm not with the 15-year mortgage because I think that's even though that's great if you can afford it, a lot of people can't afford that. So if you're being conservative, 25 to 35% at the max of your take-home pay, you're still able to invest. You're still able to pay off debt if you have it. You're still able to build wealth while still paying your mortgage. You never want to get into a situation where your mortgage payment is so much money that you're only able to pay that mortgage. Like, I pay my mortgage, I can barely eat, I could barely save money for my kids' college, I can barely pay off debt, but I paid my mortgage. You want to be able to do everything. So the way you're able to do everything, and most of us have to pay something, either we're paying rent or we're paying a mortgage, but you can control how much that mortgage payment is. And I like that mortgage payment to be as low as possible. And I've told you guys, I've been on this channel for 5 years. I bought my house in 2016. So I've been almost in it for over 8 years. The reason we're able to afford what we're able to afford, the reason why like I could take off from YouTube for a month, 2 months, is because my mortgage payment is like $1,500 and I'm making way more. When I used to be a teacher, I'm making significantly more. Like, I don't worry about not being able to pay my mortgage. And I didn't say, well, I'm making a whole bunch more money from YouTube, I need to sell this house and buy another house. I'm like, we're staying right here because there's no stress around money right now. When my father-in-law moved in, I was like, oh, we can afford it. Not saying I want to afford it forever, but I'm like, okay, we can afford it. We can afford to pay people. We can afford to do this because our expenses are so low. So I really want you guys to think about that. I know we all want to make sure like our house looks like this and this like that, but I'm not going to do it at the result of stress. Like I painted, since I've been in this house, I changed my flooring. I painted the house. I painted the inside of the house. Like, I've done little things, but I've not moved. I didn't move to a whole nother house, right? Because I knew what that payment was going to look like. It's probably gonna be double the price. Now that prices have gone up, try to keep your expenses as low as possible. And I don't really know what you mean by at what stage of the home buying process, but I would always get a loan estimate, right? To make sure that you're being conservative as to what you're spending. I hope that makes sense, Alexander. All right. That's question number 3, I think. Okay. That's question number 2. I'm going to take 2 more. Sabine, hopefully I'm saying that right. Sabine. Okay. Hi. What do you think to rent to own for your good house? I don't like rent to own. I've done a video about this. I've done a video about a lot of stuff. That's why I didn't feel too bad leaving the channel for a little while, because I have a lot of videos. I'm not a big fan of rent to own, especially through companies. So if you're going through like a rent to own company, they're locking you into a price, right? And then usually you're paying more than the market rent in order to hold that house. Either some of that's going towards saving for your down payment, either some of that's just going because it's extra money. Whatever it is, it's usually not the best situation. And a lot of people find they're locked into this house, they're locked into the price, and they rent to own for maybe, a year or 2 years, and then they don't want to buy the house anymore. And sometimes they lose the money that they save toward it. So I'm not a big fan of rent to own unless the terms are really favorable. Maybe you're doing with a private seller. But I don't like being locked into a price when you don't know what home values are going to be in the future. And there's just been a lot of problems around that. So generally speaking, people want to do rent to own because they don't have enough for a down payment, or their credit is not where it needs to be. So I think you need to work on your credit if that's the issue, and try to do it as quickly as possible. And then the other thing is, I want you to, because you're not going to be able to buy the house anyway until you work on your credit. So just work on it now. And then if you're worried about the down payment, there are so many down payment assistance programs, especially state and local programs, that you should be able to cover that down payment. So I like those, working on your credit first, and getting down payment assistance. I like that better than trying to do rent to own. Yeah. But I do have a video about why I don't like it, more specifically, why I don't like rent to own. All right, that's question number 3. All right. Mo Sun. All right. Am I able to get a home in a 55 plus community neighborhood if my co-borrower is over 55? And do we have to be related to go on the same loan? No. So this is a lot of good questions in one question, right? So number 1, this is for everybody. You don't have to be related to somebody to buy a house with them. You could buy a house with a friend. You could buy a house with a stranger. As long as you both go on the loan application, you could buy a house together. So you don't have to be related. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be anything. Any 2 people can pretty much, if they agree, can buy a property together. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 is typically, and just double check this where you live, but typically in 55 and older communities, there's 2 things I want to tell you about 55 and older communities. Number 1 is at least one person usually has to be over 55. So for example, say that you're 60, but you marry like Bill Belichick and his wife. He can move to a 55 and older community with her because she's younger, if they're married, typically. Okay. So you can move in with 55. And I'm thinking even with the co-borrower, as long as one person on the mortgage is over 55, you can move into the 55 and older community, and unless they're under 18, right? So because a lot of those places don't allow children. So we're not talking about children. We're talking about your co-borrower, your spouse, that's moving in with you, they can be under 55. As long as one person is over 55, they qualify. Also, there's usually a rule that only at least 20% of the units don't have to be over, at least 20% of the units do not have to be above 55. So ask if it's a resale community or if it's new construction. If it's new construction, ask the on-site sales agent and say, have you reached your 80% or your 20% cap? Because a lot of times they will take people younger as long as it's not more than 20% of the community. Okay, that's number one. But you still have to abide by the same rules. You can't have children, you can't have that, but you could be 35, and as long as you're under and you're by yourself, and you can move into that community as long as they're not over that 20% cap. So yeah, that's what I want to say. 20% cap, see if they've reached that yet. And you should be able to move in as long as one person is 55. All right, good question. I think that's number 4. Thank you, Rachel. I miss you guys too. I think Stella, Ella's been putting in some of these video links, but I've done the video in the last couple of months, so it's pretty recent. It might be my last video, honestly, that I posted. Teresa says, yeah, fees can be HOA and a condo fee. The condo fee can be higher than HOA fee. Check all those fees. Those of you that, because condos aren't always less expensive. They're less to worry about. They're less maintenance. They're less things like that, but they're not always less expensive. All right. All right. So, all right, for always, forever, for life. Hey, with uncertainty of everything going to buy on the administration, I'm truly scared to buy. Should I be scared? We're never going to be scared, right? We don't have the spirit of fear. However, we're going to do things more intelligently, right? So everybody shouldn't be buying right now. You need to be super stable to be buying right now. And one of my videos coming out is going to be, should you be buying a house right now? And I kind of go over the people that should and people that shouldn't. So I'll have that. But this is going to be my last question because it's a good one. All right. So student loans. So on May 5th, the Trump administration, they any student loans that were in default, you had to start paying on those again, or you possibly have garnishment. That's number 1. And on May 5th, those student loans started showing back up on where they were removed from your credit report, and they weren't impacting your credit. May 5th, they automatically went back on if you weren't on a payment plan, right? As them being in default. So a lot of people, especially if you were in the market to buy a house, around this time, you might have found that your credit score dropped significantly. Some people's credit scores dropped 70, 50 points. The higher your credit is, the higher the drop was going to be. So I don't know if people on this chat, if they were impacted by that, but that did happen. So you want to make sure as quickly as possible, if possible, you get on a student loan payment plan. Income-based plans are still available. You need to try to get on those. Get on a payment plan as quickly as possible because it will impact your ability to buy a house. All right. So the main things that you need to think about with student loans is that every loan type, and I see some of your super chats coming in. I'll take those before I get off. But every student loan type has a different way they look at student loans. So that's number 1. And I don't have them all memorized. I have some of them memorized, but not all of them. So I do have a video that goes over how FHA looks at student loans, how VA looks at student loans, how USDA looks at student loans, and how conventional looks at student loans. I have that video. So just put in student loans, you'll find those videos. But here are some main things you need to think about with student loans. Even if you're not paying on them, if they're in forbearance, if they're in forbearance, if they're not in default, I don't want to say that. But if you're not paying on them, then you are going to, or the lender is going to include them into your debt to income ratio. But they may include them at 1% of your balance. So if you owe $100,000, that's going to be $1,000 a month that they're going to consider you paying, right? or it's going to be 0.5%. So it might be $500 depending on the loan type, but they are going to consider it. So in some cases, if you're on an income-based payment plan, then they'll just consider what you're paying on the income-based plan. So say you calculate your income-based plan and it's $50 or $100, then that's what they'll count in some cases. So a lot of times it makes sense to get out of forbearance or to get out of not paying and get on a payment plan. So when the lender's calculating your debt to income ratio, they're not including those percentages because some of those percentages can be significantly high. All right. I also want you to be really mindful about, like, we need our eyes and ears open to anything that the administration is doing with student loans, because the Biden administration was making it much easier, right, for you to qualify, for you to get in the save plan or this plan or that plan. We don't know if they're going to change how these income-based plans work. So I really want you to be conservative. If you have student loans and you're not sure how long you're going to be on some of these plans, then I want you to calculate that. If I had to come out of, if you had to pay your full student loan, could you still afford this house? Like, that's how I want you to be looking at some of these things, because we don't know if they're going to change the same way that Biden did executive orders to change some of the payments and change some plans or try to do certain things, is the same way the Trump administration can do it in the other way, because they want some of that revenue that they feel like they're losing from student loans. So really look at it and say, hey, if I had to make my regular payment, could I afford a house? And that would be, and stay tuned on my channel. I'm going to do some more videos on student loans, but I just want you to be really conservative on like the student loans and how much your payment is going to be. And if anything is going to change. At one point, they did pull back some of the income driven payment options. And so we have to just be, until there's some stability there, I want you to be conservative. If you have high student loan debt and you're paying $0 or you're paying $5 or you're paying something very low, don't assume that that's always going to stay like that, at least for right now. And you're saying that they're going to include your payments even if you're paying $0 right now, but it depends on what kind of loan you're taking out. So watch that video and I help you calculate how much they're probably going to include in your debt to income ratio. All right, I'm going to take these last two. Super chats. All right, so Benz, I'm 1 year into my home as of 6/7/2025. Congratulations. Based upon your advice, no down payment, no closing, I guess, and received $500 back at closing. Congratulations. Thank you for coming back. I really, really appreciate it. And congratulations on 1 year. I'm super, super excited. All right. Thank you so much. All right. And congratulations. And thank you for the super chat. All right. And I have videos, you guys, legit videos about how you can buy a house with no money out of your pocket or very little money out of your pocket. All right. Lee, I'm going to say Lee. I'm thinking about jumping into the housing market in Columbia, South Carolina. Any advice? So get pre-approved now. So while you're thinking about it, get pre-approved. So you know exactly where you stand. I want you to start researching any down payment assistance programs that you may qualify for. Even if you have some money saved, then I still want you to look and see if it makes sense for you to apply for any down payment assistance programs, because South Carolina has some programs. So look at that. So you're going to get pre-approved. I want you to watch the video that Kevin and I did about the pre-approval process so you understand how that works. I definitely want you to do 3 mortgage quotes, right? During your process, so you make sure you're getting the best rate. I want you to consider resale, even though new construction seems very like new and shiny and great. A lot of times, right now at least, a lot of new construction builders are building much smaller homes. They're building them closer together because they're trying to make more money off of less. They're not putting as much detail in the house. So even though it looks very nice with new construction, you could find a better quality resale home on more land. You're going to get more per square foot, generally speaking, on a resale. So don't be scared. A lot of people are, especially first time home buyers, are scared to buy a resale because they're like, oh, somebody lived here, might have some issues. Get 2 inspections if you're scared, but it could be that you're going to really get a better value, at least with a resale home. So at least think about it and watch all my videos and get my masterclass. But watch all my videos. I try to organize them so you can see, like, how to work with your agent, how to work with your lender, your mortgage options. So yeah, just watch all my videos. Join me live more often as you go through the process. And I'm excited for you. So get it done and get in, get out and see what's out there now. A lot of people, as we're getting into like the beginning of the summer, but if people have their home on the market and they have children specifically, and they're trying to get them, the house sold and back into another house before the new school year begins, people start getting a little bit desperate around end of July, August to get that house sold. So it might be an opportunity for you during that time. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm back, you guys. And thank you. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye.